All right, here we go.
Here
Episode number 2.
we go.
Charles, take it away.
All right, so this is episode number 2 of Fantasy Football, question mark, where myself, Charles Barr, a casual football fan, and Jonathan Lamar Chapman, our football analyst. Yes, you heard it right, Lamar.
Lamar, that's the middle name, man. And you can say it with whatever stank you want on there. I am proud of that name, and I'm staying with that name.
It's a
So
good
it's won
name.
me lots of bets, so I'm okay with it.
But I just want people to know when they look at your Twitter handle, the L underscore Chapman, that's what the L represents.
That's right. I am a selfish plugging D-bag. The Twitter
So,
handle is JL underscore Chapman. That's JL underscore CHAPMAN. So any questions you have for the podcast, hit me up there. Let me know what you think, good or bad. Tell us we're the worst ever. Man, we'd love to hear from you. So anything you got, go ahead and send it there. That's Jonathan Lamar. That's what the JL stands for. So
Um, and if you would be so kind enough to grant me one wish, any listeners that would, if you tweet at John Chapman, make sure to hashtag selfless plugging because that is my
yeah,
favorite thing I've ever heard. Okay,
that represents me so well.
selfless plugging. What can I do? All right. So, anywho, um, last week's episode focused on the most important um, and sometimes the most clear position group in the running backs. But to me, it's the thing I look for the most. This week's about wide receivers. And for me, it's my toughest, most difficult position group to draft. It always throws me off because people get so high on receivers in these rankings, and it messes with me a bit. So just like our other episode, John breaks down these players into tiers. So let's go ahead and start with these wide receivers in this first elite tier.
Right. So basically, everything I do is tier based ranking, which, that's nothing new. But the idea behind it is don't compare numbers. So don't worry about your number 3 versus your number 4. Worry about the level in which they qualify in. So at the top, I've got 6 elite guys. Number 1 is definitely Antonio Brown. I mean, the guy has finished number 1 3 years in a row for PPR rankings. I mean, the guy's just killed it. Number 2, Odell Beckham. We'll get more into. 3, Julio Jones. 4, AJ Green. He was the number 1 receiver in the league before he got hurt last year. And then we've got number 5, Jordy Nelson, and number 6, Mike Evans, who I like the least of this group. I know in a lot of dynasty rankings he's going number 1 overall. I'm not a fan of that guy, but he is there. He is elite. He's dominated. He did great last year, and that's kind of what we got. We got these big 6.
And didn't you say that you saw somewhere in PPF that Mike Evans was ranked number 1 over?
It's number 1, and I get how they do that because they do a run blocking grade and a pass catching grade. And Mike Evans, I mean, when that boy blocks, it's pretty legit.
Yeah.
Um, he goes after it. And if you've seen any of the NFL networks, like where they rank the top 100 players and stuff, man, he picks up a cornerback and suplexes him. I mean, the guy can impose his will. He's 6'5". He's over 250. I mean, he's a big cat,
Yeah.
and he uses his size to his advantage.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a question that I think is going to be a pretty casual question that I think a lot of people would feel. So Antonio Brown, for people who draft him in the first round, like there's all your eggs in one basket, essentially, because your first round is huge. But what is the percentage to people who took Antonio Brown in the first round and the percentage to people who won championships? I think it's really low.
So here's the deal. It is low because basically to win a championship, you have to get that huge stud that people overlooked. So number 1 last year was, again, the top 2 guys are running backs, right? So the number 1 guy on fantasy championship rosters, that was DJ. Johnson for the Cardinals last year. He totally killed it. And so if you had him, he was on 30% of all championship rosters. That's David Johnson. Number two, most people wouldn't guess, and that's LaShawn McCoy. And that's because he was going at the back end of the second round, sometimes third round of the draft. So you got to find these steals. And you'll hear me say this a lot. You don't win your fantasy drafts in the first round, but you can lose them. And I stole that line from Matthew Berry of ESPN long, long time ago. I haven't listened to his podcast in a few years, but he's right. Um, you don't win your draft in the first two rounds, but you can lose it. And so, what I want to do in my first two rounds is completely minimize risk. And whenever you look at Antonio Brown, that's what you're doing. You are minimizing risk. Let's look at his stats of what he's put up. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers whenever you look at the total numbers that he's had. So if we look at just the last few years, 1,200 yards, 1,800 yards, 1,600 yards, 1,490, 900 yards. I mean, the guy has just balled out 4 years straight. And so he's super safe, especially with Big Ben in that offense. He's going to put up numbers.
So we've got that first elite ranking. Before I ask my next question, could you take us through that next tier?
So you're looking for the guys after the Big Six?
Yes.
Okay, so it leads off with Ty, which, man, T.Y. Hilton, he led the entire NFL in all yards. He had over 1,400 yards and totally killed it. The problem is he just never gets touchdowns. His touchdown totals, these are his career touchdown totals, 7.5, 7.56. And so, I mean, are you expecting him to get more yards this year than he had? I mean, he already led the NFL in yards. I think he's at his upside. So I have him at 7.
So
then I got go ahead.
In a lot of the mock drafts that I've done, it's weird because I've seen him go in the first round 3, 4, 5 times. And to me, that's kind of like a weird trend to see.
And so I get it. I mean, I have Ty at 15 because I value running backs so high. So I have my second tier running backs all ahead of Ty. So I get it. I mean, it's a matter of preference. He's safe. I get it. Andrew Luck is his quarterback, so you know he's getting the ball, and he's produced consistently. Each year he's in the league. He's still got a couple years contract-wise if you want to go dynasty. Like, I get it. I really do. But he's not a person I'm going to really have on any of my teams. I don't care what my position is. It doesn't work for me because people will take him in the first round, just like you said. I wouldn't take him until 15.
So to go back to the elite tier, I want to talk about a guy real quick in Mike Evans. And I know they said PPF had him at number 1, and again, they're grading with run blocking and all those things. But you have him back sort of at the tail end of that elite ranking. Is also part of that too that Deshaun is there?
Yeah, I mean, you got to put that into consideration. Not only Deshaun Jackson, I don't think he's the biggest threat to his value. I think O.J. Howard and Chris Godwin out of Penn State, the rookie that they drafted, there's going to be a lot of targets that go away. He led the entire NFL in targets. Odell was second, and that's going to drop. There's no doubt about that. But my biggest kind of hesitation with Mike Evans is touchdowns. He had 12 touchdowns this rookie year, and everybody's like, oh my gosh. Last year he had 3. This year, 12. That's a huge variation. So what I want in my top guys is consistency and low risk. And I don't think he represents that. Will he finish as a top 1 or 2 receiver? Yeah, as long as he stays healthy. But there's still a big variety there with what this guy offers.
But those are only 3 data points. I mean, that 3 could just be thrown out the window if he goes out and competes the next 2 years and puts up 10 and 12.
Yeah, completely agree there. But he hasn't done it yet.
Right. So here's the thing. Whether people know this or not, I'm an Eagles fan. All right.
There you go, man.
And this year we changed our fortunes. We jumped into free agency and we got ourselves a stud in Alshon Jeffrey. So, man, give me his floor and his ceiling?
Man, so let's start with his ceiling. He's top 5, his ceiling. If everything goes well, the kid can be so great. Obviously, we had his suspension. He's played through a lot of nagging injuries, hamstrings, soft tissue type stuff. I mean, the guy can kill it. And whenever you see here's the deal. John Fox coached the Browns last year and somehow still has a job. I don't understand. Him and Jeff Fisher, I think they have some blackmail stuff on their owners because I don't know how they still have jobs.
Right.
Going to the Eagles is a huge upset. These are his 3 quarterbacks he had last year: Cutler, Hoyer, and Barkley. And no offense to any of those 3 people, but none of them are Carson Wentz.
Right.
And I don't think Wentz is great, but I mean, he's a young talent that can. I mean, he could throw the ball. And when you have a big target, like the boy can jump, Alshon. That boy can play. So
Yeah.
I think he's gonna play. I really, really do.
What's the floor?
Okay, so the floor. Let's look at his projections. Okay, so the Eagles' targets. These are the target leaders from last year. Jordan Matthews had 117 targets. Ertz 106. DGB, who was just cut, had 74. And Nelson Aguilar, who I cannot stand, I think is one of the worst wide receivers in the entire NFL, is 69.
Had a good spring camp.
Yeah, that's great, man. He looks great in shirt and shorts. I just don't think he's a football player.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Now, here's my projection for him. I think he'll receive about 108 targets. Let's say he's had a 60% catch rate throughout his year. And so if he just keeps those numbers with those targets, that puts him at 65 catches, 1,040 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which puts him at wide receiver 12. So I think that's his average. Ceiling 5, average 12, and I think the lowest he will be is a wide receiver 24. Bottom end wide receiver 2. No way he goes lower than that.
Love it. In your rankings, you have Devontae.
Sorry, real quick side note. I'm sorry.
Okay.
He's in another contract year. And so he's playing a 1-year prove it deal. And I don't think he's staying with the Eagles next year. Sorry to tell you this, but Jordan Matthews, Torrey Smith, and Alshon Jeffrey are all on 1-year deals. And
We're going to
so
get one of them.
you're going to get one of them, but I don't think it's the one you want. Alshon will be gone next year. I don't think you'll have the money to pay him. That kid's so great. I don't think you're gonna be able to keep him.
Well, I think you're a liar. Okay. Moving on. Why'd you have to go back to that point? Anyway.
I'm sorry. Fly Eagles.
In rankings, you have Devontae Adams over Amari Cooper. Me says how? How does that happen?
Okay, I'm in a MFL 10 best ball league, and Amari Cooper went ahead of AJ Green. Somehow AJ Green fell to me at 11. I don't understand how that happened.
Wow.
So let's just look at what happened last year. 1, they're the same age. 2, Devontae beat him by 6 spots last year. Devontae finished 9th last year. Cooper finished 15th. Number 2, Cooper hasn't even led his own team in fantasy stats in his 2 years in the NFL. Crabtree has beat him in targets, receptions, and touchdowns. Both
And
the
yardage?
last 2 years. Yep. Targets? No, not yardage. Crabtree beat him 1 year in yardage, and Cooper beat him this year in yardage, but still receptions, targets, and touchdowns. Crabtree beat him, and that's the thing. He needs to be closer to Crabtree's status. Now his talent is undeniable. You see how much of a freak athlete this guy is, but he drops a lot of passes. Him and Mike Evans have led the entire NFL in drops the past 2 years. Now they get the target volume where they can make up for it, so it doesn't look bad. But they drop a lot of passes. And then you look at who's throwing the passes. Aaron Rodgers is still the best quarterback in the NFL. And if you don't think he's the best, he's at least top 3. And I would not put Derek Carr there yet. I love Derek Carr, and I think he's a top 10 guy. But Aaron Rodgers throws the ball at the goal line, and the Raiders run the ball at the goal line. The Raiders gave Latavius Murray 12 rushing touchdowns last year. That doesn't even make sense. And so the Packers still have no running back. They drafted 3 running backs this year. They're going to keep throwing around the red zone.
back to episode 1, that kind of makes me love Marshawn that much more.
Yeah, I get it, man. It fits. It fits.
Yeah. So if you're going to take a shot at Martavius Bryant, where are you going to go?
Man, as time goes on, I am a bigger and bigger Marshawn. I'm sorry, not Marshawn, Martavius Bryant fan. I guess just because he hasn't been suspended yet, and so
Hmm.
as long as he's not suspended, I feel like he should almost move up a spot a week because it's like that carrot stick dangling.
Yeah, it'll.
But his ADP, his average draft position, is the number 29th wide receiver and 57th overall. My ranks are almost spot on with that. Um, if you get him in the 5th round, congratulations. You are getting a wide receiver 2/wide receiver 1, low end wide receiver 1, because the guy, his physical nature is just off the charts. How big he is and how fast he is just, it's nuts. He almost averaged a touchdown a game. And so if he plays all the things, he's having 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Like that's just going to happen. And that's a wide receiver 1. If you get that, you're a wide receiver 1.
So kind of in that same conversation, though, he's not the number 1 guy. He's the number 2, which is just bonkers. But what number 2 receiver has the highest ceiling, in your opinion?
And so let me say this real quick back to Martavius because I think he fits in this. You got to remember what Sammy Coates did last year with one hand after he broke his hand. And Martavis can do so much better. The guy is a freak. If he just quits smoking weed for a year,
Yeah.
he's going to put up crazy, crazy numbers. And he's really young still. Outside of that, I think it's a lot of guys we've talked about already. Devontae Adams, man, with his crazy touchdowns. And, man, what's going to happen when Jordy leaves in Dynasty? Devontae Adams is going to be the number 1 guy for Aaron Rodgers. Mari Cooper, we talked about. And I'd probably say Dante Moncrief. He's another guy that's averaged almost a touchdown per game. And so
Ugh.
if he could put his regular football self together in between the 20s and not wait till you get into the goal line, the guy could be a beast.
I don't know, man. That Colts offense, I think, number 1, on just a quick side note, he's the most underused and abused quarterback that I've ever seen in terms of an organization and what they support him with.
They paid him so much that they got hurt financially, and it took a toll. It took a giant toll, unfortunately.
So I need to. Can I pause? I need to screw this up for a second. My charger's upstairs. I need to go grab it before my computer dies.
Run.
Sorry,
YouTube peeps. This is just kind of what it is. So while he's up there, I will share with you guys some of my consistency rankings for the wide receivers. So I went through and I charted how many games each wide receiver scored over 30 points, over 20 points, over 10, and under 10. And the results were pretty interesting because I'll say this, only 2 wide receivers had 3 games over 30 points. The first one's Antonio Brown, which most of us could guess. Number 2 guy, Brandon Cooks. I don't think most people would get. Not quite sure what he's going to be able to do, and we're going to talk more about that when Charles comes back. But the huge telling thing, especially if you're in your best ball leagues, you want those receivers that have the most game over 20 points because those are going to be the guys that start. And the bottom guys that kind of stand out to me are Des Bryant with 4. Again, Des Bryant only played 12 games. So that stands out. AJ Green for sure. Gosh, AJ Green, he only played 9 games. He was the number 1 wide receiver after 9 games. And he had, guess what? He had 3 games over 30. So he's in that category with Antonio Brown, Brandon Cooks, and AJ Green. And that guy, I cannot believe he fell to me at number 11 in my recent MFL 10. And so the main thing that you're looking for is you've got to decide what it is you want with your roster. Do you want the guys that are going to be the home run hitters, or do you want the guys that are just going to get 10 points week in and week out, kind of like Larry Fitzgerald, where, you know what? I mean, he went in the 6th, 7th, 8th round last year, but he put 12 games up over 10 points. I mean, only one person beat that. That was Jordy Nelson with 13.
And I like guys who can home run hit.
So you like the big ones.
I like the guys that can go all out. Although I did take Larry Fitzgerald, but that's just because he fell to me. I mean, and I just got absolutely lucky with that guy. But no, I'm usually like I'm a guy who's going to take a chance on Terrell Pryor.
Okay, take a pause for a sec. Just pause
Yep.
for a sec. Okay, when you're ready. Next question.
Word to Big Bird. All right, so we're kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, but what fantasy rookie for the wide receiver position has the biggest impact in the NFL next year, in your opinion?
So if you're looking at a 1 year thing, I think it's the exact same answer for just 1 year redraft leagues or dynasty leagues, and that's Corey Davis. The kid is so special. The only negative that you can have on him is that he went to a running offense with the Tennessee Titans. But there are so many targets available. So let's look at it. Their target leaders for last year. The number one wide receiver they had is Rashard Matthews with 108. Delaney Walker had 102 targets, Tajay 83, and DeMarco 83. Now, all those guys are back, but I'm telling you this right now. Corey Davis will lead that team in targets in the first year. Now, somebody's sitting there listening saying, yeah, but they added Eric Decker. And let me tell you this, that's a good thing because you're going to have Corey Davis, you're going to have Rashard Matthews on the outside, and you're going to have Eric Decker in the slot. And so there's no way that Corey Davis is going to be getting doubled early on. You just can't do it. The guy runs the clearest routes and has a catch radius that is comparable to Megatron. The guy can play. You go back and watch his film. Oh man, he's awesome. He's just awesome. So I think he's going to put up great numbers. Having said that, there is no AJ Green, there is no Julio Jones, uh, elite athlete falling in a perfect position like we've had in the past. That's not happening this year. So you've got to tone it down.
What about maybe some other rookie that I know that you're high on from the Buffalo Bills? Maybe a guy who could
Ooh.
surprise a lot of people.
You talking about my boy Zay Jones?
I think so.
I love Zay Jones out of East Carolina. He led the entire NCAA in target receptions. I mean, the guy is just a beast. He could have went to a bigger program, but he's a legacy there, and he didn't even open up his recruiting. Like he told them his junior year, "I'm going to be an East Carolina Pirate." And the guy, that's the thing here. If you look at Buffalo, who else do they have? Even if Sammy Watkins can stay healthy, that's great. No one there had over 90 targets last year. Robert Woods and Marquise Goodwin are gone. They had 140 targets combined. There's so many targets available there. And that kid, he's going to be starting day one.
I mean, can you believe that the Rams just supported their quarterback so strongly by going out and getting Robert Woods for the number one position?
You say that, and it is funny, but I kind of like Robert Woods for fantasy. Like, and so this is all a roster construction thing. So let's say you go out and you gamble on guys like Sammy Watkins and Alshon Jeffrey, like these kind of high risk, high reward guys. I'm going to balance my roster if I get those two guys with guys like Zay Jones, Robert Woods, Kenny Britt, these all out target monsters that aren't sexy. And
Yeah.
that way I can balance what I want. And you can get this guy so late. But Zay Jones, he's going to kill it. He's going to have him. He'll be an RB2 or 3 if he stays healthy. And you can get him. He's basically an undrafted free agent in redraft leagues. Like, save a spot and grab this guy. You will be so happy.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a question that might surprise some people using Zay Jones.
All right, let's
Who do
play.
you take? Who do you take earlier, John Ross or Zay Jones?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. John Ross is undraftable to me. And here's why. A lot of it is my philosophy in fantasy football. What do I want? If it's a best ball league, I want John Ross. If it's a redraft or dynasty, I want Zay Jones because I want consistency. Ross is pissed off you started him 4 times in a row that you're going to bench him and he's going to have a 2 touchdown game on your bench. I would so take Zay Jones. In fantasy football in the draft, I think John Ross was one of the worst draft picks in the entire NFL. Not because I don't like his game too much. He's just, gosh, he's had so many injuries, so many injuries. And they already had A.J. Green, and they had Tyler Boyd, and they have Tyler Eifert. Like, it's just such a waste. If you look at Brandon LaFell was a number 2 wide receiver last year for him, which is just bonkers. Like, it was just an unnecessary pick. And with his injury history, I just don't. Oh man, I want nothing to do with this kid.
Yeah.
He's a good kid. I just don't want him on my fantasy team.
I have a bet for us.
Oh, let's do this, Biz.
All right. We have to pick any rookie of our choosing, rookie wide receiver, and we have to say who's going to outperform who.
All right. So I proposed the last bet in the last podcast. Sorry. And you said that the Jags would finish second place or better in their division.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to let you throw out your terms on this one.
Okay. Okay, I don't know the terms. Let me just pick my player. Let me pick my player first. My player is Mike Williams.
Okay. Damn it.
And let me give my explanation first, because
Okay.
I think that some of the critique will be that they have other targets there, and I know that you're high on Keenan Allen. I think that Mike Williams is such a talent, a freak talent, a better, faster Dez talent. And just look at the impact that Dez had year one. I think it'll be better with Phillip Rivers. And then also too, just like you were saying, who they gonna double? Who are they gonna guard? You have so many tools there, but I think that Phillip Rivers is going to really love throwing to that athletic wide receiver.
So here's the bet, and I'll make this bet.
Okay.
In PPR format, Zay Jones will have more points at the end of 2017 than Mike Williams.
Mm-mm.
You want to make that bet?
Yes. That's
okay. And I'll say this, and this is a classic case of risk versus reward. So you have Mike Evans, that is the supreme talent, no doubt. But he's risky because he's going into a spot with a lot of proven receivers and 2 proven tight ends. And so you don't know. But again, he was picked. What was he picked? 9th overall? I mean, the guy went 7th overall. I'm sorry. Went super high. And then you have a guy like Zay Jones that is not sexy at all. Like, he did run a pretty quick 40, but he's not flashy. He's from a smaller school, but he's safer. It is the classic high ceiling, low floor versus a safe bet. So I'm going to take the safe bet on this one, and I'm going to take Zay Jones for more points in a PPR. I know he's going to get more catches.
Okay,
so
those
touchdowns scare me.
I have the terms. If your guy wins, then I will send you 2 frozen Giordano's pizzas.
Oh, dang.
Okay. And then you've got to send me some good quality, maybe like an Omaha steak or something like that, or something of your choosing, but somewhere in the equal value of, $40 plus shipping. So, yeah. That's
okay, so I'm in Pasadena, not Omaha, but I will get you some badass steaks, and I will send them your way.
Steak, they're frozen. They're flash frozen, man. They're quality steaks.
I feel you, man. I'm just joking.
Sponsored by Omaha Steaks. No, we're not.
Yeah, thanks, Warren Buffett.
All right, man. So we have a bit that we do, and we get to focus on a division. And so last week we talked about the greatest division in football. And this week we're going to talk about not the second or third. I don't know where I rank the NFC West, but we're talking about the NFC West, baby.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I'm a Niners guy, and this division is just god awful. I think it's just bad. So, all right, I'm gonna change hats. I'm gonna go to the host here, and I want to figure out what Charles thinks. Who do you think is last place in the NFC West next year. It's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
No, it's not you guys.
Oh,
It's
all right. All right.
the Rams, dude. Yeah, man. Celebrate, not last place. No, I see somebody who's very scared in Jared Goff. I feel like we witnessed it when we were at the draft. We were at the draft in Chicago. Matter of fact, me and John won tickets for day 2 inside the draft. It was like one of the most amazing days of my life. Um, you
It
know,
was pretty cool, man. That was legit. It was a legit time. You get to stand, right across from when the guys get announced. Obviously, we saw um, your guy Carson Wentz
yep.
and Jared Goff, and it was such a cool time, man.
Well,
And
that's what I
I'll
was.
tell you this.
That's
I'll
what I
I'll
was
say this.
referencing.
Goff had one of the worst rookie seasons
Yeah.
in football history.
So that's what I was talking about though when we were at the draft. That there's actually a funny story. It didn't make the headlines, but John and I were there to experience. It was sweet actually. So it's at the end of the night, and we're over on Lakeshore, and they have this whole other event going on. We had won tickets to that on day 1, and it's got to be 10 o'clock at night. I don't even know. I think John and I were eating like some Japanese food somehow that they had. I don't know. And so we're just hanging in that place, and the NFL Network's down there announcing, talking, and then they bring out Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. And the crowd, because we're closer to North Dakota, crowd's going insane. Just
Oh, they went bonkers, man. It was awesome.
they lost their minds when Carson went, Carson Wentz, Carson Wentz. And then when they said Jared Goff's name, boo. I mean, the place went boo. And I looked in that guy's eyes, and I swear to God, I knew right then, I'm like, bust. He looked so meek, so just like, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm like, that guy's a bust. So I think the Rams didn't improve, unfortunately. And I think that they're wasting their time with him. And it's going to take them a year.
Yeah, I'll say this: if you're in a dynasty league, somebody picked Jared Goff with a really high pick, probably second or third pick, 2 quarterback league, first round for sure. Go get him. I'm a believer in his head coach coming over from the Washington system. And if you haven't watched the All or Nothing series on Amazon, go watch it. And not saying that that's a glowing endorsement of Goff, but the kid can throw the ball, and if he can put something together, I mean, Jeff Fisher's one of the worst head coaches in NFL history.
Yeah,
And so moving on from that, I think there's a chance. There's a small chance. I wouldn't take him in redraft leagues. You don't need to,
yeah.
but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So let me finish.
Who do you got number 3? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
My ranking. So then I'm going to go on to the Niners because I think that they're a team that, with Hoyer, weirdly enough, that guy kind of knows how to ball. He's not elite by any means, but he can play. And I love San Fran's defense. And then I think number 3 is Seattle. I think Seattle's taken steps backwards, not forward.
So you got them number 2 overall?
Yes, number 2. And then number 1 is the Arizona Cardinals. That defense.
Yep. We have the same order, and that makes me scared.
What's that?
We have the exact same order, and that scares me.
So take me through your Niners, man. What's the hope for them? What do you want to see this year?
So I'll say this. They gave up the most rushing yards in the past decade, but they're getting a lot of guys back. They were pretty stout on run defense until Navarro Bowman tore his Achilles against the Cowboys, which I was at that game and it broke my heart. But anyway, you add in Foster out of Alabama in the late second. You add in Solomon Thomas. They're changing their run or their entire defensive scheme to what Seattle runs with the 4-3. They're going to be a huge improvement. And side note on Hoyer, he started 4 full games last year for the Bears. All 4 games over 300 yards passing. So there's a chance. We're not going to win a lot of games, but there's a chance. I'm really hoping Arizona, they go out there and they do it for Bruce Arians and Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer to a lesser degree. Those are just some awesome guys that have been around. Man, I hope they put together a good season. I really want them to.
Yeah, and that Arizona when they gave up on Michael Floyd, I felt was a turning point for their organization because he's a guy, and I'm not even talking about off the field, but obviously that played a factor. But once they gave up on him on the field, I mean, he was like this freak, one play out of 50. And it was just like, oh,
Yep.
see it. And he ripped the ball one-handed over a guy. But every other play, he's dropping the ball. He's missing blocks. He's running the wrong route. He's a mess. And so I think that now they've focused on other guys. They're going to be even harder to stop.
Yeah, I agree. So great podcast, man. I feel like this is good.
Episode 2. Yeah, it was awesome.
All right. Again, reach out to us on Twitter, JL_Chapman. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. It is Fantasy Football. Shout out to Ron Burgundy. And let us know what you think and what you want us to cover. Next episode up, we will have, what do we got, quarterbacks or tight ends?
Quarterbacks.
All right. Let's do this. Thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.